Another Monday, another soul-sucking staff meeting, I muttered, adjusting my tie, which felt suspiciously like a noose. Innovate solutions, more like innovate ways to steal credit from your employees. The company's name was almost as creative as its products. Slightly modified versions of existing software, repackaged and sold as revolutionary. My cubicle, a beige box of quiet desperation, was my personal purgatory, and PowerPoint presentations were my instrument of torture. I, Alex Holden, was a cog in this machine. A talented cog, if I may say so myself, but still a cog. I was a senior software architect, which basically meant I designed the software that other people took credit for. My specialty? Thinking outside the box, coming up with innovative solutions, and then watching my boss, Martin, present those solutions as his own. Martin was a special kind of awful. The kind of guy who'd steal your lunch from the fridge and then offer to help you look for it. With a straight face. He was a master of corporate doublespeak, a champion of buzzwords, a black hole of original thought. He was also, unfortunately, my direct superior. Today's meeting was particularly egregious. We were discussing Project Phoenix, a new software platform that was supposed to revolutionize the company's, well, everything. It was my baby, my brainchild. I'd spent months developing the concept, designing the architecture, writing most of the code. Martin, of course, was presenting it. As I envisioned, he droned, clicking through a PowerPoint presentation filled with bullet points and stock photos. Project Phoenix will be a game changer. It will disrupt the market, enhance our brand, and synergize our core competencies. I suppressed the urge to scream. He hadn't envisioned shit. He'd barely understood the concept when I'd explained it to him repeatedly, using increasingly simple metaphors. The executives, a collection of suits who wouldn't know a line of code from a line of cocaine, nodded approvingly. They loved Martin. He was a yes man, a smooth talker, a corporate climber of the most parasitic variety. "Brilliant, Martin, absolutely brilliant," one of them gushed. "You've really outdone yourself this time." "Thank you, sir," Martin said, beaming. "I couldn't have done it without my team." He gestured vaguely in my direction, without actually making eye contact. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. I wanted to stand up, to shout, to expose him for the fraud he was. But I didn't. I couldn't. I needed this job. I needed the paycheck. I needed to not get fired. That was my life, a constant cycle of frustration, disillusionment, and suppressed rage. And then came the muffin. It was a blueberry muffin, seemingly innocuous, purchased from the office cafeteria. I'd been feeling peckish, skipped breakfast, big mistake. I took a bite, and something went wrong. The muffin, or perhaps a particularly dense blueberry, lodged itself in my throat. I choked, gasped, clawed at my neck, my vision blurring, my lungs burning. The room swam around me. I saw faces, distorted and blurry, filled with concern? Amusement? I couldn't tell. "He's choking!" someone shouted. "Give him the Heimlich!" another voice yelled. But it was too late. I collapsed, my body hitting the floor with a dull thud. The last thing I saw was Martin's face, hovering above me, his expression annoyed, as if my near-death experience was somehow inconveniencing him. 1 minute I was choking on a suspiciously dense blueberry muffin. The next, I was staring up at the fluorescent lights, wondering if this was how it all ended. Death by baked goods. Fantastic. There was no tunnel of light, no angelic choir, no divine judgment. Just a confusing, disorienting void filled with paperwork. I kid you not. Paperwork. I found myself in a waiting room, a sterile, bureaucratic space filled with uncomfortable chairs and bored-looking entities. They weren't human, not exactly. More like vaguely humanoid shapes, shifting and shimmering, their features indistinct. "Name?" one of them droned, its voice a monotonous, genderless buzz. Alex Holden," I stammered. "Cause of death? Muffin?" It looked at me, its expression blank. Or maybe it was pitying. I couldn't tell. "Fill out this form," it said, shoving a piece of paper towards me. "In triplicate, and wait your turn." Turns out, even dying is a bureaucratic nightmare. I half expected to fill out a form in triplicate to get my second chance. My turn came eventually. I was ushered into a small windowless office where another entity sat behind a desk. "Mr. Holden," it said, its voice devoid of any emotion, "your case has been reviewed, and it has been determined that you are eligible for a do-over." "A do-over?" I repeated, my voice a confused mumble. "A second chance," it clarified, "an opportunity to rectify your past mistakes." "You mean I'm going back?" I asked, my heart starting to pound. "Not exactly," it said. "You will be returned to your previous life, but not chronologically. You will retain your memories, your experiences, but you will not be able to alter the past, only influence the present." It was confusing, cryptic, and utterly absurd, but I wasn't in a position to argue. "So what happens now?" I asked. "You wake up," it said. And then I did. I woke up with a gasp, my body drenched in sweat, my head pounding with a killer headache. I was in my cubicle, slumped over my keyboard, my cheek resting on the sticky, half-eaten remains of a blueberry muffin. It was the same day. The day of the staff meeting, the day of Martin's grand presentation, the day of my near-death experience. But I was different. I wasn't physically stronger or magically gifted or anything like that. But I was clear, focused. The fog of frustration and disillusionment that had clouded my mind for years was gone, replaced by a sharp, almost painful clarity. I could see everything. The subtle power dynamics of the office, the hidden agendas, the sheer, unadulterated bullshit that permeated every interaction. And I could anticipate it, predict it, almost feel it coming. It wasn't precognition, not exactly. It was more like heightened intuition, a hyper-awareness of people's motivations, their intentions, their lies. And I had also lost something. My fear, my inhibitions, my willingness to play the game. I woke up with a killer headache, a newfound appreciation for oxygen, and the distinct feeling that I'd just been given the cheat codes to life. No angelic choirs, no divine revelations, just clarity, and a burning desire to make Martin's life a living hell. I looked around the office, at my colleagues, at my enemies, and I smiled. A slow, cold, predatory smile. The game was on. And this time, I wasn't just playing to survive. I was playing to win. And Martin, my dear, sweet, utterly incompetent boss, was about to learn that stealing my ideas had consequences. Very, very unpleasant consequences. The weirdest part about waking up after dying, or almost dying, whatever, wasn't the existential dread or the sudden urge to rewrite my career path. It was the quiet. I was an orphan. Always had been, as far as this timeline was concerned. No frantic calls from family, no concerned friends checking in. Just silence. In my previous life, I'd resented the constant demands of my parents, the endless stream of family gatherings, the over-the-top weddings and social events. All of it was orchestrated by a fiancé I no longer could stand the thought of. Now, I'd give anything to hear their voices, to feel their presence, even for a fleeting moment. But they were gone. And the silence, the emptiness, was a constant reminder of what I'd lost, of what I was fighting for. It was a motivator, a cold, hard fuel for the fire that was now burning in my gut. I used the quiet, the solitude, to plan, to strategize, to prepare. I reviewed everything I knew about Innovate Solutions, about Martin, about the coming storm. I made lists, I drew diagrams, I rehearsed my lines. Because that's what it was, wasn't it? A performance, a play. And I, Alex Holden, was about to play the role of a lifetime. The office was exactly as I remembered it. A soul-crushing labyrinth of beige cubicles, flickering fluorescent lights, and the constant, irritating hum of forced productivity. The air reeked of stale coffee, cheap air freshener, and desperation. I arrived early, deliberately. I wanted to observe, to assess, to get a feel for the players before the game began. The office was mostly empty, the early birds, or the truly desperate, just starting to trickle in. I saw Sarah, the perpetually stressed-out designer from my old team, already hunched over her computer, her face illuminated by the harsh glow of the screen. She looked up as I passed, offering a weak smile. "Morning, Alex," she said, her voice tired. "You're in early?" "Couldn't sleep," I replied, shrugging. "Big day today, right?" She nodded, her eyes filled with a familiar mixture of anxiety and anticipation. "Yeah, Martin's big presentation. Hope it goes well." It will, I thought, my lips curling into a grim smile. Just not for him. I saw Mark, the office sycophant, already sucking up to Martin, offering him coffee and flattery in equal measure. I saw Jennifer, the ambitious intern, desperately trying to catch Martin's eye, hoping for a crumb of recognition. I saw David, the quiet, competent programmer who, I knew, would be the next victim of Martin's credit-stealing ways. The office was a zoo of carefully disguised ambition. Everyone smiling, nodding, and backstabbing with the practiced ease of seasoned politicians. And then there was Martin, my boss, my nemesis, my former friend. He was standing by the coffee machine holding court, surrounded by a small group of his loyal followers. He was laughing, joking, radiating a confidence that was both infuriating and pathetic. He hadn't changed. He was still the same smug, self-satisfied, utterly incompetent parasite he'd always been. I walked over to him, forcing a smile, playing the part of the eager, naive employee. "Morning, Martin," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "Big day, huh?" He looked at me, his eyes barely registering my presence. "Alex," he said, his voice dismissive. "Right on time, as always? Good?" He didn't ask me how I was feeling, didn't inquire about my accident. He didn't care. I was just a tool, a resource, a stepping stone on his path to corporate glory. "Excited about the presentation?" I asked, my voice laced with a subtle irony that he, of course, completely missed. "Excited?" he repeated, puffing out his chest. "Alex, this is going to be huge. This is going to change everything. This is my masterpiece." "My masterpiece," I thought, my fists clenching. "Your stolen masterpiece." "I'm sure it will be, Martin," I said, my voice calm and even. "I'm sure it will be unforgettable." I spent the rest of the morning going through the motions, pretending to work, while secretly observing, planning, preparing. I made sure the recording device was securely in place, hidden in plain sight, ready to capture Martin's inevitable betrayal. I rehearsed my lines, my responses, my carefully crafted performance. The meeting, when it finally arrived, was a carbon copy of my previous life's experience. The same sterile conference room, the same board executives, the same smug, self-satisfied Martin. He presented my work, my ideas, my soul as his own. He used my slides, my diagrams, my carefully crafted arguments to paint a picture of his own brilliance. And I sat there silent, observing, letting him dig his own grave. As I envisioned, he droned, clicking through the PowerPoint slides, my PowerPoint slides. Project Phoenix will revolutionize the industry. It will disrupt the market, enhance our brand, and synergize our core competencies. I almost laughed. Almost. But I kept my expression neutral, my gaze fixed on Martin, my mind focused on the coming reckoning. The executives, predictably, were impressed. They praised Martin's vision, his leadership, his sheer audacity. And I, the true architect of Project Phoenix, the man whose work was being stolen, whose future was being erased, sat there and watched it all unfold. A silent observer. A ghost in my own life. But not for long. The game, as always, was about timing. And my time, I knew, was about to come. Martin was basking in the applause, the accolades, the stolen glory. And I, Alex Holden, the reborn reluctant avenger, was about to rain on his parade. With a goddamn thunderstorm. The meeting. The one where, in my previous life, I'd foolishly confronted Martin, objecting to his blatant theft of my ideas, only to be publicly humiliated and ultimately fired. This time, I played a different game. I sat there silent, observant, a ghost in my own life, watching Martin bask in the glow of my stolen glory. He presented Project Phoenix, my brainchild, my months of work, as his own. He used my slides, my diagrams, my carefully crafted arguments to paint a picture of his supposed brilliance. The executives predictably were enthralled. They oohed and awed. They praised his vision, his leadership, his sheer audacity. And I encouraged him. "Brilliant, Martin, absolutely brilliant," I said, with just the right amount of feigned enthusiasm. "You've really outdone yourself this time. The board will be thrilled." My internal monologue, of course, was slightly different. "Keep digging, buddy. You're almost to China." I even added fuel to the fire, subtly prompting him to elaborate on certain aspects of the project, aspects that I knew he barely understood. "Martin," I said innocently, "could you perhaps expand on the algorithmic architecture of the platform? I'm particularly interested in how you envision the scalability challenges." He stumbled, of course. He stammered, he blustered. He tried to deflect with buzzwords and corporate jargon. But I kept pressing, politely, persistently, exposing his ignorance, his fraudulence. And the executives slowly but surely started to notice. The seeds of doubt were planted. What they didn't know was that I was recording the entire meeting. Not with some bulky, obvious device, but with, well, let's just call it a perk of my rebirth. My senses were heightened, sharpened. I could perceive things, hear things, with an acuity I'd never possessed before. And I could, with a bit of focus, record those perceptions, storing them in my mind like a human hard drive. My new gift, or whatever this weird rebirth thing was, came with perks. I could practically smell bullshit now, and Martin's office reeked of it. The recording was just one piece of the puzzle. I was also, quietly, meticulously, gathering other evidence. Expense reports, emails, performance reviews, internal memos, anything that could expose Martin's pattern of deceit, his incompetence, his systematic exploitation of his subordinates. It was a risky game, a delicate dance of deception. I had to maintain the facade of the loyal employee, while secretly working to dismantle his empire from within. And I needed allies. I started with the overlooked, the underestimated, the disgruntled. The people who, like me, had been victims of Martin's tyranny. Sarah, the designer, was a prime target. She was talented, creative, and perpetually frustrated by Martin's constant rejection of her ideas, his insistence on sticking to outdated, uninspired designs. "Look," I whispered to her one afternoon, as we were both, supposedly, working late. "Things are about to change around here, and you might want to be on the right side of that change." She looked at me, her eyes narrowed, suspicious. "What are you talking about, Alex?" "I'm talking about justice, Sarah," I said, my voice low. "About recognition. About finally getting the credit you deserve." I didn't reveal my full plan, of course. I just hinted at possibilities, at a future where talent, not sycophancy, was rewarded, at a future where Martin was no longer in charge. She was hesitant at first, but she was also desperate. Desperate for a chance, for a change, for something better. And she wasn't the only one. I reached out to David, the programmer whose code Martin had repeatedly stolen. To Emily, the marketing manager whose campaigns had been consistently undermined by Martin's ego. To a growing network of disgruntled employees, all victims of Martin's toxic leadership. I was building a coalition, a secret alliance, a force for change. And then there was the mentor. He was a legend, a ghost, a cautionary tale. His name was Arthur Bellwether, And he'd once been the CEO of a major tech company, a visionary leader who had built an empire from the ground up. Until, of course, he was betrayed, ousted, and publicly disgraced. By Martin's father, no less. I found him living in a secluded cabin, far from the city, far from the corporate world he'd once dominated. He was older, his hair white, his face lined with the marks of hardship and regret. But his eyes still burned with a fierce intelligence, a lingering spark of defiance. "You remind me of myself, kid," he said, his voice raspy as we sat on his porch, overlooking a breathtaking mountain vista. "Before they chewed me up and spat me out. But you've got something I didn't have, a second chance." He'd heard the whispers, the rumors about my uncanny insights, my sudden rise within Innovate Solutions. He'd recognized something in me, a kindred spirit, a fellow traveler on the path of redemption. He became my mentor, my guide, my unlikely confidant. He taught me the unspoken rules of the corporate game, the art of manipulation, the necessity of ruthlessness. "They played dirty, Alex," he said, his voice firm. "You have to play dirtier. You have to be smarter, faster, and you have to be willing to do whatever it takes to win." But he also cautioned me. He warned me about the dangers of unchecked ambition, of the corrupting influence of power, of losing myself in the process. "Don't become them, Alex," he said, his eyes filled with a profound sadness. "Don't let the revenge consume you. Don't lose your soul." His words were a constant reminder, a guiding light in the darkness I was navigating. And I, armed with his wisdom, with my growing network of allies, with my newfound abilities, was starting to change things. Subtly, at first. But the impact was noticeable. I encouraged collaboration, rewarded honesty, and championed innovation. I challenged the status quo, questioned the outdated practices, and subtly undermined Martin's authority at every turn. I promoted Sarah, giving her the creative control she deserved. I supported David, ensuring his code was recognized and rewarded. I started to build a team, a loyal, dedicated team that shared my vision for a different kind of company. It wasn't enough to destroy Martin. I wanted to build something better, something that wouldn't chew up and spit out talented people like me, like Bellwether. "You're shaking things up, Alex," Bellwether said during one of our meetings. "You're making waves. You're making a difference." "It's a start," I replied, my voice determined. "But it's just the beginning." The game, as always, was about more than just survival. It was about transformation, about creating a world where talent, not treachery, was rewarded. And I, Alex Holden, the reborn, reluctant revolutionary, was leading the charge. One stolen idea, one exposed lie, one carefully planted seed at a time. The future was uncertain, yes, but for the first time in a long time, or, 2 times, I felt hopeful and a little bit dangerous, which, in the corporate world, was probably a good thing. I knew very few people I could go to, but it was the few connections I made in my past life that I knew could be useful. I had a few acquaintances, people who I knew could be helpful. There was an old college professor. He was old and out of touch with the cutthroat corporate world, but I knew his mind was sharp and that he had many books on business strategies. I knew that I needed capital. The air in my apartment crackled with a nervous energy that had nothing to do with the questionable wiring. Today was D-Day. Not the Normandy kind, thankfully, but the corporate equivalent. The day Martin's carefully constructed house of cards came crashing down, and I, Alexander Holden, former corporate drone, was about to light the match. I'd spent weeks, months even, preparing for this, gathering evidence, cultivating allies, and most importantly, honing my newfound gift. The ability to anticipate, to predict, to see through the bullshit. It wasn't magic, not exactly. It was more like hyper-awareness, a heightened intuition that bordered on the precognitive. And it was damn useful. I checked myself in the mirror one last time. Sharp suit, power tie, and an expression that I hoped conveyed ruthless confidence, rather than the sheer, unadulterated terror I was actually feeling. I looked the part. Now I just had to play it. The Innovate Solutions boardroom was a monument to corporate sterility. Glass, steel, and a ridiculously long table that probably cost more than my former apartment. The usual suspects were assembled, the board of directors, a collection of suits who looked like they'd been born wearing ties, and the senior executives, all vying for power and Martin's increasingly precarious favor. Martin, of course, was at the head of the table, holding court, basking in the glow of his stolen success. He was presenting Project Phoenix, my project, with the smug self-assurance of a man who believed he was untouchable. Sir. And so, with this groundbreaking new platform, he droned, clicking through the my PowerPoint slides. Innovate Solutions will solidify its position as a market leader, achieving unprecedented growth and blah, blah, blah. I waited, patiently, letting him spin his web of lies, letting him bask in the applause, letting him dig his own grave. Then, as he reached his grand finale, his triumphant conclusion, I made my move. Before we proceed with Mr. Martin's vision, I said, my voice cutting through the room, clear and steady, I believe there are a few irregularities that need to be addressed. All eyes turned to me. The board members surprised by my interruption. The executives sensing an opportunity or perhaps a threat. And Martin looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Whole. Alex, he said, his voice laced with a forced politeness. What is the meaning of this? The meaning, Martin, I replied, my voice calm but firm, is that I'm tired of the lies. I'm tired of the theft. I'm tired of you. I pulled out my phone, a sleek, unassuming device that held the key to his destruction. The recording, the one I'd captured, not through magic or superpowers, but through enhanced observation and a strategically placed microphone. I played it. The room was silent, except for the sound of Martin's voice, his own words condemning him. He was boasting about stealing my ideas, about manipulating the executives, about his utter contempt for everyone in the room. The effect was immediate. The board members, initially stunned, began to murmur amongst themselves, their expressions shifting from surprise to anger to a dawning realization. What is this? One of them stammered. This, I said, my voice ringing with authority, is the truth. This is proof that Mr. Martin has been systematically defrauding this company, stealing intellectual property, and lying to all of you. I then proceeded to lay out the rest of the evidence. The documented instances of his plagiarism, the emails, the performance reviews, the testimonies of my allies, the employees he'd wronged, the people he'd stepped on to climb his way to the top. You set me up, Martin sputtered, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. This is a conspiracy. No, Martin, I replied, my voice dangerously calm. This is justice. I looked around the room, meeting the gaze of each board member, each executive, each witness. I'm not asking you to take my word for it, I said. I'm asking you to look at the evidence, to listen to your own instincts, to do the right thing. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Martin's ragged breathing. He was finished. He knew it. I knew it. Everyone in the room knew it. The board, after a brief, tense deliberation, voted, unanimously, to remove Martin from his position, effective immediately. He was escorted from the building, his career in ruins, his future uncertain, his smug arrogance replaced by a look of utter defeat. It was over, he was gone. But the fallout was just beginning. The company was in turmoil, morale was low, trust was shattered, and the future uncertain. And that's when I stepped up. I know this is a difficult time, I said, addressing the assembled employees, my voice firm and reassuring. But I want to assure you that Innovate Solutions will survive this. We will thrive. We will rebuild. I outlined my vision for the future, a vision based not on lies and deceit, but on honesty, on collaboration, on on rewarding actual talent. We're going to do things differently around here, I announced. No more secrets, no more backstabbing, no more stolen ideas. From now on, we succeed together. I promoted Sarah, the designer, to head of creative, giving her the recognition and the authority she deserved. I promoted David, the programmer, to head of development, empowering him to build a team based on merit, not on favoritism. I restructured the company, eliminating redundant positions, streamlining operations, and creating a culture of transparency and accountability. It wasn't easy. There was resistance, skepticism, even outright hostility. But I persevered. I worked tirelessly, leading by example, demonstrating my commitment to building a better future. And slowly, gradually, things began to change. The employees, initially wary, started to trust me. They saw the results, the improvements, the genuine commitment to their well-being. Innovate Solutions, once a breeding ground for toxic ambition and cutthroat competition, was becoming something different, something better, something sustainable. I had won. I had avenged my past, reclaimed my stolen ideas, and built a foundation for a future I could actually be proud of. But the victory, as always, was bittersweet. The scars of betrayal remained. The memories of loss still lingered. But I was moving forward, step by step, building a new life, a new legacy, a new me. And this time, I was in control. The game had changed, yes, but so had I. And I, Alex Holden, the reborn reluctant leader, was finally ready to play, to win, and to build a future worthy of the second chance I'd been given. The dust hadn't even settled from Martin's explosive exit, and I was already being ushered into a new role. Not CEO. Not yet. That would have been too abrupt, too obvious. Instead, the board, in their infinite and slightly panicked wisdom, appointed me as Executive Vice President of Strategic Initiatives. A title so vague it could mean anything, which was precisely the point. It gave me power, authority, and most importantly, access. My first act wasn't some grand, sweeping gesture. It was a simple email, a company-wide email sent to every single employee, from the janitorial staff to the senior executives. Subject: moving forward. Team? As you all know, the past few weeks have been turbulent. There have been allegations, accusations, and ultimately, a significant change in leadership. I won't dwell on the past, but I do want to address the future. Innovate Solutions has always been a company built on, well, let's be honest, the illusion of innovation. We've been chasing trends, stealing ideas, and prioritizing short-term profits over long-term growth. That ends. Now, my vision for this company is simple. We will be ethical, transparent, and actually innovative. We will reward talent, not sycophancy. We will encourage collaboration, not backstabbing. We will build a culture of respect, where every employee feels valued, empowered, and safe. This won't be easy. It will require a fundamental shift in how we operate, in how we think, in how we treat each other. But I believe it's necessary, not just for the success of this company, but for our own well-being. I'm asking for your trust, your support, your commitment to this new vision. I know many of you have been wronged, overlooked, or exploited. I can't undo the past, but I can promise you this. I will do everything in my power to build a better future. A future where your ideas matter, where your contributions are recognized, where your voices are heard. My door is always open. Sincerely, Alex Holden, Executive Vice President of Strategic Initiatives. The response was mixed. Some were skeptical, cynical, convinced it was just another corporate platitude. Others were cautiously optimistic, hoping for a genuine change but fearing disappointment. And a few, the ones who'd suffered the most under Martin's regime, were elated. We're going to do things differently around here, I announced to the assembled staff during my first all-hands meeting. No more secrets, no more backstabbing, no more stolen ideas. From now on, we succeed together. My actions spoke louder than words. I promoted Sarah, the designer, to head of creative, giving her the authority and the resources to build a team based on merit, not on favoritism. I saw her quietly wiping away tears after I'd told her. I restructured the development department, empowering David, the programmer, to implement an open source model, encouraging collaboration and innovation. He had spent years in the shadow, his work stolen. He beamed with pride. I implemented a new performance review system, one that valued actual contributions, not just by political maneuvering. I established an anonymous reporting system where employees could report unethical behavior without fear of retaliation. I even, grudgingly, met with human resources to discuss employee morale and workplace wellness. The irony of the reborn, ruthless strategist discussing wellness was not lost on me. It was a revolution, a quiet but determined revolution, aimed at dismantling the toxic culture that had permeated Innovate Solutions. And it was working. The atmosphere in the office began to shift. The fear, the anxiety, the constant sense of being watched began to dissipate. People started to collaborate, to share ideas, to actually innovate. It's different, Alex, Sarah said one afternoon as we were reviewing designs for a new project. People are happier, they're more productive, they're actually excited to come to work. That's the goal, Sarah, I replied, smiling. To build a company where people feel valued, respected, and empowered. Of course, not everyone was happy. The old guard, the ones who had benefited from Martin's regime, the parasites, were resistant. They grumbled, they complained, they tried to sabotage my efforts. But they were outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and ultimately out of time. I was building something new, something better, something sustainable. I was creating a culture of integrity, of collaboration, of genuine innovation. And in doing so, I was not only redeeming my past mistakes, but I was also laying the foundation for a future far brighter than anything I could have imagined. The game, as always, was about the long term. And I, Alex Holden, the reborn leader, was playing the long game. And this time, I was playing to win, not just for myself, but for everyone who had been wronged, overlooked, or exploited by the old regime. The new order had arrived, and it was, surprisingly, built on something resembling ethics. A novel concept, I know, but one I was determined to make the foundation of my new empire. The corporate battles were won, the enemies vanquished, the new order established. But there was another war raging, a quieter, more personal one. The war within, my rebirth, my second chance, had given me power, clarity, and a burning desire for justice. But it hadn't magically erased the scars of my past. The betrayal, the loss, the sheer unadulterated rage still lingered, a low hum beneath the surface of my newfound success. So I did something I'd never considered before. I sought therapy. Dr. Ramirez, a woman with kind eyes and a disconcertingly insightful gaze, became my unlikely confidant. I sat on her plush couch, surrounded by soothing colors and strategically placed plants. And I unburdened myself. I talked about Martin, about Andrea, about dying, about the bureaucratic nightmare of the afterlife, about the confusing, disorienting return to my old life, about the power I now wielded and the fear that it would corrupt me. "You've been through a trauma, Alex," she said gently after one particularly rambling session. "A profound trauma, and you're dealing with it in the only way you know how, by controlling, by manipulating, by seeking revenge. Is that bad?" I asked, my voice hesitant. "It's human," she replied. "But it's not sustainable. You can't build a future on the foundations of the past. You need to heal, to forgive, to move on." Forgive? The word felt foreign, almost offensive. Forgive Martin? Forgive Andrea? Forgive the universe for screwing me over? But Dr. Ramirez was persistent. She challenged me, she pushed me, she forced me to confront the demons I'd been so carefully avoiding. And slowly, gradually, I started to heal, to accept, to let go. I also started to reconnect, In my previous life, I'd been so focused on my career, on my ambition, on proving myself, that I'd neglected my relationships. I'd pushed people away. I'd taken them for granted. I'd been a pretty lousy friend. Son, if I had living parents, which I didn't, and partner. There was one person in particular that I needed to make amends with. Her name was Jessica. In my previous life, Jessica had been my best friend, my confidant, my almost something more. But I'd been too blind, too focused on my own ambitions to see what was right in front of me. I'd taken her friendship for granted. I'd dismissed her feelings. I'd hurt her. I found her living in a small apartment, working as a freelance writer. She was surprised to hear from me, understandably. "Alex?" she said, her voice hesitant as she opened the door. What are you doing here?" I wanted to apologize, Jessica," I said, my voice trembling slightly. For everything, for being a terrible friend, for not seeing you, for hurting you." She stared at me, her eyes searching mine, looking for any sign of insincerity. "I was a fool, Jessica," I continued, my voice raw with emotion. "I was so focused on my own stupid ambitions that I didn't appreciate what I had. You were the best friend I ever had, and I threw it away." A long silence followed. Then she smiled, a sad but forgiving smile. "It's okay, Alex," she said, her voice soft. "It was a long time ago. I understand. We talked for hours, catching up, reminiscing, and rebuilding a bridge that I'd thought was irrevocably burned. It wasn't a romantic reconciliation, not yet, perhaps never. But it was a start, a healing, a step towards wholeness. And then came the celebration. It wasn't a corporate event, not exactly. It was more of a gathering, a celebration of transformation, of new beginnings, of the future we were building together. We held it at a renovated warehouse, a space that reflected the new culture of Innovate Solutions, open, collaborative, and filled with a sense of possibility. There were speeches, of course, but they weren't the usual corporate platitudes, the self-congratulatory nonsense that Martin had so loved. "We're here tonight," I said, my voice echoing through the spacious room, "to celebrate not just the success of Innovate Solutions, but the transformation we've undergone. We've faced challenges, yes. We've overcome obstacles. We've emerged stronger, more resilient, and more determined than ever." I looked out at the faces in the crowd, my colleagues, my friends, my allies. Sarah, beaming with pride. David, looking confident and empowered. Even Arthur Bellwether, my mentor, had made the journey, his eyes twinkling with approval. "We've built a company," I continued, "based not on greed, not on ambition, not on the toxic culture of the past. We've built a company based on integrity, on collaboration, on respect. And that, my friends, is something to celebrate." I thanked them sincerely for their hard work, for their dedication, for their belief in me. I acknowledged the past, the mistakes, the betrayals, but I also emphasized the future, the opportunities, the possibilities. "We're just getting started," I said, my voice filled with a newfound hope, a genuine optimism that I hadn't felt in 2 lifetimes. "The future is ours to create, and together, we will build something extraordinary." The applause was deafening, the cheers echoing through the room. It was a moment of triumph, of validation, of pure, unadulterated joy. But it wasn't just about the company. It was about me, about my journey, about my redemption. I had faced my demons, I had confronted my past, and I had emerged victorious, not just as a businessman, not just as a leader, but as a human being. The game, as always, was about more than just winning. It was about growth, about transformation, about becoming the best version of myself. And I, Alex Holden, the reborn reluctant hero, was finally, truly on that path. The future was uncertain, yes, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready, ready to face whatever came next, ready to lead, ready to live.